Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Meet the Coach, where I'm here together with Dr. Steve Jeffs. And today we have Priya Mohal as our Meet the Coach today. Welcome, Priya. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you.
Yeah, where are you based?
I am based just outside of London, West London.
Okay, cool. So why don't you introduce a little bit? I think you're the best person, if the three in the room, I think you're the best person that can introduce you better than we can. So why don't you just tell a bit more about Priya and what you do in coaching and so on?
So right now, I am a career coach, and my specialism in career coaching is predominantly for South Asian women. So that has come from not just because I'm South Asian woman, that does help, but I had a previous career before I found coaching and got my coaching qualifications. I worked in banking for about 10 years and I worked from the bottom, joined a graduate scheme, worked my way up to be a relationship manager, had a large portfolio of clients. And I really enjoyed that. It was day in, day out. It was quite full time working in a corporate setting. And as life changed, got married, had children, as it's for a lot of people, that's definitely turning point in their lives. For me, it was, and after my second child, it just wasn't as sustainable working in that kind of environment. So I came out of banking and I was looking at things to do. Who can I help? What can I do? And I did think at first I'd go into mentoring or some kind of consultancy, having had a business background working in banking, and my degree was also business related. And I started off there. I thought, oh, I'll do a small business diploma in coaching, which I did. And then I did a personal performance diploma in coaching as well. And when I came to supporting people, I found that the type of people I was attracting or looking for were actually women in corporate roles. So similar to what I had been. And I discovered there that actually, if I had had a coach or a bit of support in my career, I might have found ways to still be working or to perhaps change my career to make things work a bit better for me. Even in the earlier days of banking, when I started on that reflection journey, I really found that actually my culture had a big impact in how I behaved in the workplace. And there were parts of being South Asian, especially as a girl in a South Asian culture, um, that is very different, even from being a man in South Asian culture. Girls are treated very differently, women are treated very differently in terms of their roles and expectations. And as I went through my banking career, I found that there were points where perhaps I didn't push myself further. I put my ambitions to a side once I started with family. And that's very expected in South Asian culture, but not everyone wants to follow that norm. So once I did my coaching qualifications, I kept coming back to these corporate women and I really recognized that there was a gap there and there was a need for them to have a bit of specialist support, almost just in that recognition of the barriers that we have in our culture
Mm.
and perhaps how to overcome that. So part of what I do now is career coaching for South Asian women. So I went back that the long way around, but I got there eventually. So even though I've got the business qualifications and the small coaching diploma, my passion, I feel, is really supporting those women in corporate roles.
Fantastic. Just to make sure we're all aligned, can you tell us what you mean by South Asian?
Yeah, so it varies. It is the continent South Asia, so but generally it is people that have come from South Asia, like me, that probably second generation immigrants. So our grandparents came to Western countries. So I have had clients in America. I've worked with some clients in Canada as well, but predominantly UK based. And it's being in that position where your grandparents have come from South Asia, from those countries. I'm Indian, but I've had clients that are Pakistani, Bangladeshi as well. And they want to retain the culture. So they teach us in line with their culture, but we're also living in a Western environment and growing up as a child in this country, we just want to fit in. So there's a bit of rebellion that goes on when we're younger and we're like, no, we change our clothes to be Western, we're speaking English, we want English food. That I think naturally happens anyway. So there's parts of the culture we want to adapt to, but then there's part of the culture we want to retain. When it comes to bringing up children, I think our parents are trying to navigate that. Um, how do we bring our children to be respectful of elders, and what does that mean? In our culture, there's a hierarchy, so the elders would always get a lot of respect. Women also are Women also have a lot of boundaries, I would say, in the home. So, what are their roles? What is expected of you? And when I got married, I think I felt quite a bit of a change. So, okay, now I'm married, I perhaps can't do those things I did when I was single. I can't go out all the time. There were things that I had to do in the family and I had to be there a lot more. So at work, I used to go for networking. I used to go for drinks with solicitors after work. After I got married, it was a little bit more like going back to the teenage years where I was living with in-laws as well. I
Mhm.
lived in a joint family of 12 people after I got married. And there were not many people at work that could suddenly understand why I wasn't going out for drinks or why I felt like I had a lot more pressure and a lot more stress. I actually just did a post on this LinkedIn 2 weeks ago, and you can see it resonates with some people how, for women in particular, having different experiences, being married and having children really does have an impact on us that is a little bit more different to our white counterparts in the workplace. So it's just having that understanding. And I think as a coach, I want to say, I know what you're going through. Okay, how are we going to work through this? What are the options? And helping them through coaching to make those adjustments. And a lot of it can come down to adjustments in mindset as well.
Interesting. I'd love to come to coaching in just a second, but how has all of this influenced how you show up as a mother for your kids? Because like there's that
Yeah,
feels like a whole other layer to this. But how's this influencing you as a mother?
that is really tricky because I'm now at the stage where I have two daughters myself. And I often talk about how do we break these cycles so that a big topic is that girls in my culture, when they're born, are not celebrated as boys are. So when boys are celebrated, there are big parties. We have a special festival that's dedicated to when sons are born. When girls are born, it's not the same. So there is a disparity there, and it's well known within the culture. I have three sisters, and it's well known at the time. My parents just wanted a boy, so they kept trying for a boy, and it's very commonplace in South Asian cultures. They still have that want, that desire that it's a son that will carry on the name. There might have been family business, and the sons would carry on the family business. So that is very, very ingrained in lots of different aspects of the culture. And now I have two daughters and I'm trying to break those cycles. So when it came to celebrations, I said, I'm celebrating for my daughters. I don't want them to have this feeling that they're second place. Um, so we try where we can. I think my husband and I have lots of conversations like, okay, is this what we want to do? We have to really consciously think and stop ourselves instead of reverting back to what our parents would have done. Are we giving them the opportunities that we have? I think sometimes a bit easy because I've got two daughters, so I will just treat them the same. Maybe if I had a son and a daughter, I might have seen differences, perhaps not from us, but from grandparents, because grandparents are still quite heavily involved in upbringing of children and being around. And children hear comments every time we're together with family. They will hear things, and I can be quite protective on what they pick up. But I definitely want to see myself as a cycle breaker. There's things that I want to change for my children that perhaps me and my sisters didn't get. Um, and also bringing that out to a wider community. So alongside the coaching, I've started on Substack, writing newsletters, and I'm forming a membership and bringing in some challenges there just for South Asian women. So that's a place where I want to build a community and say, hey, look, we know we've got these experiences, we know that we've had this upbringing. And even though South Asia is quite large and we've got different countries there with different cultures, there are some common threads in there. And I think the inequality is a common thread.
I think it's a really, for me, it's a really interesting concept or thing that we're talking about. And what pops in my mind when I'm listening to you is helping South Asian women is one thing. Is there not another thing that the other norm, the white, the English, and so on, if, for example, that maybe they need to learn and be educated to be able to see what are the differences, how come that you have difference. So, for example, that you got married, that is different. I think that maybe also is going to help them because helping them in their career is one thing to help them, but it's also the society around, I think, that needs to be
Yeah,
molded.
yeah. There's definitely a piece there, and I have done a few workshops with corporate organisations. I went back to the bank that I've worked for and different financial institutions as well, just to say, I suppose, and there have been hiring managers and other people in the workshops as well, just to raise awareness to say, this is our culture, and sometimes this is how it can translate into the workplace. So where I said earlier, we have a hierarchy. When I reflect back on my career, especially in the early days and being in meetings, and I'd be the only female in a room, I'd be the only South Asian woman in the room, and it was very hard to speak up. And I almost used to question, like, what have I got to say? Are they even going to listen to me? Will they take note of what I've got to say? And really feeling inferior in the meetings where they were very senior white men predominantly in this type of meetings. Because we're with finance directors, with CEOs. And it took quite a few years for me to build that up. And some of it will come from experience, and some of it is a self-belief as well, to say, actually, I have got something to contribute, or I know something. So, that development takes place over time. But definitely there is more societal work and corporate work that goes on there. I have been working with some corporates. They have these employee resource networks in large corporations now, and that's where they've got women's networks and South Asian networks. So there is a South Asian Heritage Month, which takes place from July to August. It's quite new. It's been going on just past 4 or 5 years. So I tend to get quite busy around that time. They release a theme for the month, and I try and do some workshops. And then, so it is slowly, I think, raising more awareness in corporates that actually people have different experiences, and everyone has different experiences as well. So it's hard to just say my experience is everyone's experience. So I always try and give some time to say, all right, these things have happened to me, but what's gone on for you? Reflect on that, and they'll do little breakout rooms where they can discuss between them whether they've experienced similar things in their family, in their culture, and just reflect, okay, how has that impacted you? Are you perhaps a bit quieter in meetings? Do you promote yourself? Do you negotiate? I find lots of women just generally don't negotiate, but I think South Asian women, it's probably lower as well, because we have that mindset, especially coming, as immigrants into a country, just you get what you're given, be happy with what you've got. So when it comes for asking for more, that feels quite difficult. So often I coach my clients around how can we make that better for you? What are the types of things that you can do to make sure that you are doing those things that signal to your management that you can take ownership of your career.
Fantastic. One thing that's common in coaching is, because we're coaching the person, not the topic, because we're not providing advice, there is this perception that as coaches, we can coach anyone on any topic. Now, what do you bring, having had lived experience in this space, that adds the value to the coaching while still coaching?
Think it's the empathy there that I can show them. So without giving them advice and without saying, I know what you're going through, because as I said, we've all got these different experiences, and mine will be different to my clients. But it's just having that understanding and that empathy. And also with me, they don't have to explain in a lot of detail. Oh, I have to go home early because I live with in-laws, because I've got responsibility. I might have to do the cooking tonight. No one else will be there. My mother-in-law's not there, or my sister-in-law's not there. Responsibility. So they don't have to go into all that background. Like, I will have some of that already. So I find that they're a bit more open with me, a bit more honest, and that adds into that coaching relationship. And that's what I need from the clients as well. All I need is their honesty, their experiences to help move them forward.
Absolutely. One of the other things that I've heard you layer this through, and I've seen in other cross-cultural diversity related coaching, is it sounds like you're also really good at naming and articulating some of the things that are taken for granted in South Asian culture. Some of those things. So I came from Australia, so I'm kind of in a different culture, even though Australian and English culture are very similar. There's also subtle differences. And having lived in the Middle East, there's something about what we assume, what we expect. And what I heard when you were talking before is that you could name all of these things that are almost not worth naming in a home country culture, but as soon as you talk about it in an English or a UK based culture, it's like they're actually different. They're not the same as what other people are having. There is another way of looking at things that are standard, and I think that's one of the things that I've heard you speak to that really does add a lot of value to allow you to converse with your clients about these cultural, historic things that are different than also what's happening in the rest of society here in organizational cultures and other things. Am I on the right track or am I making things up here?
No, no, definitely. And I think, sometimes, I worked in large teams and predominantly white colleagues, and at the time it just felt that I couldn't raise these differences. And for them, every day completely normal. But for me, okay, Priya, go, you're going to go meet this client, you're going to go do a presentation. And for me, there's my personality and then there was my culture, and both together it took quite a bit of work. And I think coming out of that environment, I did a lot of self-reflection. I did why was it so hard for me? And there were extra layers there that I just had to take apart. And I think that's why I can speak about it more confidently now, is because I've had that time. Whereas when I speak to clients, or when I'm predominantly on LinkedIn and I'm posting and I'll touch on these things of what it was different. I have a lot of people that agree with me and say, actually, now that you've said it, that's what I've been going through, and they just haven't done that self-reflection piece. But then I bring it up and I bring it up in workshops that actually this has been a bit different for me. Like, I wasn't taught to speak my mind. I wasn't taught to give an opinion. And it's actually just in my work life that people said, we need your opinion. We value your opinion. That's why you're here. I wasn't brought up like that. I was only told that men share their opinion and women were in the kitchen. We were doing this. It was very segregated in my household. So as a girl growing up, you absorb what you see. And that was what I was seeing. And then only when I was in a professional environment, actually, there were other mentors, managers that were encouraging me. No, you can do this. You should be speaking up. You should be doing things like this. You should be forming your opinion. And it took me a little while longer, I would say, than maybe with English counterparts to come to that and to develop into that. But once I did, it was no stopping me towards the end of it.
I love it. That's so cool. What I appreciate most about what you said was that distinction between self and culture.
Mm.
I think there really is a collapse where no, I am who I am, and this is all I am. And for you to go, well, actually, no, I am so much more. This is my culture, and now that extra layer of as a parent and in conversation with your husband, what do we want to keep? What do we want to? How do we maintain our connection, but also not the limitations of that? That feels like a really empowered coach-like discussion.
Yeah, and that is a big piece, and it's almost an everyday piece where we come up against something new and like, okay, how are we going to tackle this
Yeah.
between ourselves? And it's nice to have that. I say in my position now that I am privileged to be able to make those decisions. Whereas
Mm,
I look towards my mother's generation and there was no say so.
mm,
She had to do things. My grandmother, my mother, they had to follow these strict rules of the culture, and there was no way out of it if you wanted to stay within the family. Whereas actually, it's my privilege now, my husband's privilege, that we get to discuss how we're going to do things and how we're going to move forward. And that's something new for our generation. So I feel that that is something that I can speak to people, men and women, that what are the changes that we're making consciously for our children, for our culture. There's a tradition that I said we were celebrating boys, and my husband and I decided actually we're going to do it for our girls, and just telling other people you have a choice. But and for some people, when they're living with their parents or their grandparents, they still feel like it's no choice. Or they won't let us do it. So you can be adult children in a family and still not have that choice. So it can be tricky. I'll say our situation is that we can, and
mm,
my in-laws go with us, and they say, "Yeah, we've got to evolve. We've got to adapt. Things are changing here." And the funny thing is, when our grandparents came over, they had a very, they came in the 60s, they had that 1960 mentality, we're keeping our culture. Whereas India progressed, but I'd say my grandparents didn't progress because they were out of it. So when we go back to India, we're like, look, all these like second cousins and cousins are all moving forward and doing these things, but you would never let us. So, things change, and it's good to change as well.
How difficult would it be for a coach that's not from the culture to help, for example, South Asian women in coaching to overcome those career challenges that you were talking about?
I don't think it's I don't think you have to have a South Asian coach. I think it can help if they want to talk about their home life. Because I know when I speak to a client, we'll start on career coaching, but the topics will change and it will come into work-life balance, it will come into home balance. There'll be other things that they want to discuss. And sometimes for that, I think the knowledge can help. Just again with that empathy, that understanding. But I think a good coach would always allow their client to speak about their challenges and guide them through it. So, and I do have clients that have had coaches before that they've enjoyed relationships before, but I also find that women are coming to me because I'm South Asian as well. So I don't think you definitely need to be. But for me, I think it helps and I build that rapport with them a little bit easier.
So I understand what you're saying is actually it's more from the client side that it's more like easy to trust someone from the same background that's going to be more for them to be more open than looking from the coach point of view.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I've seen from my clients.
Uh, and would you work also with South Asian men?
I would. I always say I predominantly
Okay.
work with women, but I could work with men. Like, again, and it depends on how open minded they want to be, how open and honest
Yeah.
they are. And I also have to probably, as a coach, put my biases aside because I know that there is a big difference in how South Asian men and women are raised, how children are raised. And it is quite obvious in the culture as well. So I sometimes think, well, you might have had a bit more opportunity, you might have had a bit more privilege than the women have had. But I think, yeah, on a professional level, definitely, it's just how much they want to change, what they want to change in their life, and whether they can be honest enough
Mm.
to work in that space with them.
So you talked about that bias, to put the bias aside when you do this. How do you do this? So there could maybe some interesting tips that you can share with some of the listeners. So if they would have a kind of bias, how do you do to be able to say, I put that bias aside so I can really focus with
Yeah, and it's something I think as coaches we work on in our training. For me, it's firstly that self-awareness of what are my biases. So I've done that self-reflection work myself and see, okay, how am I feeling about this? Could this influence my coaching in any way? And then just working with the client and listening, that active listening, working with what they're telling you, their body language, how they're coming across. And again, it's being professional just to work on that relationship, listening to them, bringing up questions relating to what they're saying specifically, and not adding anything that I've got, not making those judgments, not putting my opinion in. That wouldn't be professional as a coach to do.
Mm.
Yeah, I would agree in my experience. If there's something you said that that curiosity feels really important in the space of biases and cross culture, but actually, I think it's more than that. It's curiosity on the things that I think I know.
Mm.
I think for a lot of coaches, we get curious, but we still have those assumptions. Oh, you say this, and I think I know what that means, or respect, or commitment, or. But actually, for us as coaches to go a little bit deeper and go, hey, you said respect. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're nodding like quite vigorously. Tell us a little bit more about what that means for you.
In terms of the respect or
Yeah, in terms of respect or curiosity for those things that we think we know, to be able to get beyond the invisible assumptions and biases.
yeah, I can sometimes see when my clients are speaking that they'll say one thing, their body language is saying another, and it's just leaning into that. And it's exactly what you just said. Tell me what you mean by this. I can see you're saying this, but actually you're really closed up. What's going on for you there? How are you feeling about this? And just leaning in and being curious. I think that's the best way to put it in a lot of the conversations is trying to break down. I know what it means for me, but tell me what this means for you. Like what is your experience of this? How much do you want to change this? And leaning in closer to what they want. After all, the calls are based on them. So I try and, put myself out and just listen.
I love that.
Do you coach? I don't know how old your daughters are, but are you do coaching with them as well, based on those things that we're talking about, their heritage and where they're in the environment right now?
I try to. I think as a coach, we always try and use a little bit of skills with kids. They listen and do better if you're not telling them what to do. Although it's really hard as a parent. I don't know if you guys have kids, but there's that balance there. So I think especially when they come up with troubles at school, having a more of a coaching approach helps with tell me what's been happening. I'm here to listen to you, and just being a support for them and using the coaching questions to have those open conversations with them. But in terms of the cultural aspect as well, I often give them a little bit of context. So because it's like within the family, I will say, well, this is what I saw growing up. What do you think about that? How would you feel if you saw that difference in how you were treated and how your cousins were treated? And we'll talk about the future as well. We'll talk about different jobs that people do and say, well, we have this and this when we were growing up, and it's very education based, and you had to do certain things, you had to behave this way. What would you think about that? So again, it's allowing them to think for themselves, gather their own opinions, and develop that from a younger age, and actually listening to them. I found as children, it was very much like, well, you're children, we're not going to listen to you. And it's now raising that status of children as well, and saying, actually, from right now, I mean, my children are 7 and 9, and it's saying to them, your opinion matters, what you say matters, and doing that from this age growing up, I'm hoping by the time they find jobs, they won't have an issue speaking to a room full of men. They'll be owning that room. As I know, there's a lot of young, confident girls nowadays across society, and I think that starts now. That starts in childhood, giving them the platforms. I just came from an assembly that my daughter's class was doing this morning, and it was so nice to see that every girl on the stage had a part to say. They were all performing in front of a whole assembly of their classmates and a group of parents. And I just think, wow, the opportunities nowadays for girls to present themselves, to push themselves forward. And hopefully we will start seeing a difference. So that's another part of the reason that I work with South Asian women, is to hopefully try and increase that diversity in leadership. I often said when I was at work, I didn't see the role models there in senior leadership. I didn't see hardly any South Asian women that were in leadership places. And for me, it just didn't feel possible to have a family and be a leader, because there was so much more responsibility, a lot's expected of you. And with my family circle, with grandparents living in a joint family, I was like, well, getting a nanny just doesn't seem feasible. I mean, they'd all laugh at me and say, what are you doing? We're here to look after your children. But, you get torn in different places. But hopefully by coaching women in their careers and seeing them progress, that's one of my ambitions, to see the women move into leadership spaces and be the role models for children like my daughters, to say it is possible.
Some great tips and questions that you just planted when you were talking about your daughters, that really women in general could ask themselves, what does that mean? So those questions that you just put forward, they could ask them those questions themselves as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it starts at a young age, and we should be more aware children absorb so much more than we realize. I think they're there as taking everything in. Sometimes I'm not aware of how much they're absorbing, but they are. Every little conversation, every snippet, how they're treated, what they're seeing in terms of relationships, confidence, what jobs we do. I work from home, and sometimes I work from home actually to be more flexible around my children, so I can still drop them off, pick them up, make them dinner. So I feel like I do those things that I want to do for my children, but actually I want them to see me working as well. And that's part of the reason why, even though I finished my corporate role, I said, no, I still want to do something. I want to be productive. But in this space, I managed to do the work that I found a passion for. And my husband actually helped me with that. He was like, that you always get really heated and you get really passionate when you speak about your culture and being a South Asian woman and that kind of. I was like, yes, exactly. And he goes, well, that's who you should coach. So I do have to put it down to my husband, because I felt I was too close to it. And I was like, really? Would South Asian women take me seriously? Or would they hire coaches? And I have found in the space I'm in, it's not executive coaching. So it's because maybe I know there are South Asian leaders out there now. There are females that are moving into those positions, but I see a lot of middle managers who have children who are split between, I want to be ambitious, I want to move forward, but I'm finding life at home really hard as well. And that tends to be where a lot of my clients are at the moment.
And that's for every woman, not
Yeah, exactly.
Every woman has that challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us a little bit more about that transition. So to go from a job, corporate, a professional, to self-employed. I saw on your website, you kind of narrate this, both a quote from your husband, but also, do I know enough? Will I do this? How does that work? And to become entrepreneurial and build your own business, what did you have to learn in that journey to get to where you are?
Everything from scratch. I'm gonna tell you, it is not an easy journey. It's a worthwhile journey, but when I look back, I left my work. I was, I think, about 5, 6 months pregnant with my second daughter, so I had the year off. By the time she was 12 months, I thought, right, I'm gonna get serious looking. I did a little mentorship course, then I found coaching. I was like, no, it's 2020. I'm gonna do the course, and I get to go out the house. I get to meet people. I get to like find people to train with. Really excited, to get back out there. And then COVID happened. So all the training's online. I didn't get to meet anyone apart from the Zoom calls, which was fine. And that's how I started the diplomas. It was all online. And I took a bit of time to do that alongside looking after two very young kids. But then starting the business, I thought, well, I've got business experience. I've worked in banking. I've done a degree. But no, the things as an entrepreneur that you need are completely different. You do not get taught them. And I honestly felt that it was doing everything from scratch, down to making my own website, um, finding out about branding, and also where to get clients from. Like, how do I tell people? And initially, I wasn't coaching. I wasn't at the same niche I'm in now. I wasn't South Asian women. It was just I'll do small business coaching. I did a diploma in small business coaching. I thought I really enjoy business. It's what I've been doing for over 10 years. I'll carry on with the business. And I'm not sure if I would call it imposter syndrome, but I just thought, am I qualified enough to do small business coaching for myself? I felt that, well, I haven't run a small business myself. I haven't successfully run a small business. And I think I talked myself out of it. And then also my heart wasn't in it either, because it was just small businesses, any businesses I'd be happy to take on. And I just felt that I wasn't giving it my all, and I wasn't finding clients that I was gelling with. Whereas when I started working with South Asian women, especially career based, I thought, this is it. This is where I felt a real affinity. But it still took a long time. And I think when you're starting off, it's like, what avenue do you go down? Everything seems to be online. And I wanted to work from home, so it's a bit difficult within school hours of getting out and about. Even if you're going to London, I find the tubes quite unreliable sometimes, and I'd have a panic about not coming back at 3 o'clock. So working online was great. And I actually see a lot more coaches doing this, and a lot more female coaches, because of the flexibility. But still, yeah, working on the business side, going through Instagram. Do I do Instagram? Do I do Facebook? And pivoting. I think every year I've pivoted. Facebook did not work for me. Instagram did not work for me. Where I said earlier, it's about my personality. I think if you're on those platforms, you've got to have the personality for it, or hire someone in who could do that. You have to do videos, you have to do the reels, you have to put yourself on there daily to build up quite a large following. And that wasn't me. So the past, I'd say maybe 2 years, 18 months, I've been working on LinkedIn predominantly, and that's where actually I found that career coaching is working well for me there. But it takes lots and lots of different. It's all a test. I think it's all trial and error, and you just got to hit. When something works, then you'll find a little bit more flow and things are coming in. I also personally enjoy writing, which is why I do the newsletters. So where I've got the career coaching, I'd like to give tools and workshops on the career coaching side. But where I have that cultural aspect of, this is what it was like for me growing up, these are the things that I have seen, the things like the hierarchy, the celebrations, the difference between how girls and boys are raised. I found that I enjoy writing those down. So I produced a newsletter to go a little bit deeper. And again, it's a little bit of prompt for people to say, has this been your experience? Has it impacted you? How have you felt through this? How have you managed this? So that's maybe more of a passion part of the business, or more community aspect, but I'm building that up over time as well.
So how important is that passion component to running and managing your own business?
I think for me, it keeps the motivation going. It feels that, all right, even if I haven't got many clients, things ebb and flow through the year, that this is one part where I can be consistent in, and it gives me the motivation to carry on. And often it's the part that I put out there where I will get comments from women to say, actually, you know what, I'm so glad that you've raised this, or I feel as if someone has seen my experience and I feel a bit more understood. And I think for South Asian women on the corporate stage, we hide it quite well. So it doesn't get seen. We aren't understood as well. whereas I'm shining a light on it and saying, actually, your experience is valid. What you're going through is valid. If you've had kids, got them married, and you're still trying to cope with everything, working through those barriers that we've put in
Mhm.
ourselves. So it's helping shining a spotlight on their experiences. And hopefully, so far it's working well.
I love it. Yeah, there's something profoundly impactful about just being able to show up. And I think that's where that passion comes in. As you said, it's like you've got this narrative, you found a voice, you found a place to be able to put it, which is really cool because you're not talking for someone else. It's not like, hey, listen to me, and I'm trying to sell and articulate, and who's my audience and what do they need to see, which is where we often get with marketing on different channels, and who's the audience here and what do they need and what's the format, which gets really fake and a lot of hard work for a lot of us. But to be able to go, all right, what does my heart want to say? How does my heart want to say it? And how do I convey that so that the people that want to hear it can find it? Like, just there's a whole lot of ease that can show up with that. And then to be able to do that regularly
Mm.
allows you to be seen for who you are, not just to be seen. And I think for small business owners as coaches, which is what we are, there's something really important about following our passion, finding that way to be who we are, to do what we're doing, but to do it in a way that can be found. And that is often the best form of marketing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it has taken me a few years to get to that point and to feel confident enough to share those stories.
Mm.
Um, the things that I share that can be quite personal. And I'd say I probably can't do it each week because it takes a lot of introspection, a lot of courage to be able to share as well. And sometimes I go to the workshop and I'm at the point now where I can say, well, this happened and this happened, and people are like, wow, she's actually talking about it. She's talking about it in a room like 50 people online. But it took a lot for me to get to that stage where I'm at peace with what happened. Um, and I'm at a point where I feel that I can change, like I said, that privilege that we can change this. We're in control of this. We can change our traditions, what we do. We can change our mindset if we choose to. And that's what I want to empower other South Asian women to do, because a lot of the times when we're younger, we're told this is the way it is. We don't have that choice to change. And that doesn't have to be true, not for everyone. I know for some people it's harder to change than others, and it's up to the person how much they want to change that. But showing up with that vulnerability, I hope, encourages other women to say, perhaps I felt like this, or I can now make a change if I want to, and just, analyze the bits and pieces of their life that they may want to change.
That's the feedback that you're getting from what you told us before.
Yeah, it's always
So
nice to
I
hear.
want to go back to the business side for a minute. So, as an entrepreneur, so if you could go back in time, what is one thing that you would do different when you started as a coach and entrepreneur?
I think when I started, I wish that I just had more of those conversations one on one with people to start off with, to just say, I want to speak to 10 people directly. I will message them, I will book in calls and just speak to them. I think when I started, I was under perhaps some illusions, perhaps some of the Instagram illusions that go on saying, well, I'll just post, I'll just keep posting, 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 and people will just come to me from posts. And for me, my experience now is that didn't happen, and it doesn't happen now. That we have to instigate those conversations. We have to speak directly to people, and also if I mean, maybe there's no way to fast track that vulnerability or that openness because it's taken me years to get to this stage. But maybe start off with a bit more honesty, start off with a bit more personality in the beginning, bringing more of myself out. I think when I finished my qualifications, like, yes, I can talk to you about boundaries. I can talk to you about active listening and how this is going to happen. And this is coaching. Whereas now I don't talk about the coaching, but I talk about myself and I talk about the changes that I've made or things that my clients have done as a result of the coaching. And this is how culture has impacted me in the workplace and whether people have recognized it in themselves. So maybe, yeah, if I could go back and tell that person a few years ago, be like, stop posting every day. It's not going to work. Just get in touch with people, talk to people, find out what you want to talk about and find that passion. So whatever it is, and make that your subject to connect with people.
I think that's a great point that a lot of coaches think I'm a coach now. people will, the doors will break down
Yeah.
and let in. And I think that networking piece is so important, to go out to where your people are, that you really, these are, like in your case, South Asian women that have a career. Where do they gather? Let me go there in person. Is there any networking event? And just show up and be yourself, as you said.
Yeah, definitely. Networking's played a big part, and sometimes I found it a bit harder. I feel like I've niched too much. Like, where are these people? But I found LinkedIn to be brilliant for networking, and I often send messages, and I like arranging chats just over Zoom, and I'll say, let's have a chat. Let's just talk about what's going on for you at the moment, with no agenda, and just connect with people, and that's worked quite nicely. And then whether they subscribe to a newsletter and they just hear from me weekly, and it's just nurturing those relationships and saying, okay, and I think quite seriously about what I can provide that will help people. So just, what can I give? And that's where I suppose coaching worksheets and things like that, things that I can produce to give to them in a small way, just helps to develop that relationship as well over time.
Mm.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Priya. This has been really enlightening and interesting, which is always kind of cool. Great to connect with you more. For those that want to follow up, that do want to reach out and connect with you, what are the best ways for people to connect?
Um, Best way, first of all, to connect on LinkedIn is always great. You will find me there, and Priya Mohal, searchable. My website is priyamohal.com. If anyone wants to have a look there, that'd be brilliant. There's ways to get in touch with me in there.
Fantastic. Any final thoughts that you want to share for our audience of coaches, Priya?
I suppose the main thing is just hopefully be yourself, find your passion and speak with passion, and hopefully we're all here to help other people grow in their lives, and I think part of that is knowing yourself and then bringing it out and helping others grow.
Thank you very much, Priya. That was
Thank
an
you.
excellent chat, and thank you very much. And everybody, goodbye.